Hello everyone, this is Chris, and I am going to make a mini album. And I've been asked by a friend to show step by step how I make the Hidden Hinge mini album. So I'm going to do it slowly. I'm going to do several different parts. I'm going to do like one phase or one step at a time. So that she has time to study it and learn uh, how to do it. So the first thing that you need to do is decide what size you want your album to be. Now I generally make, and most people also generally make, the album cover 1/4 of an inch larger than the pages within the album. And this is so that the pages stay safe and clean and look good. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to use chipboard. Now the reason that we use chipboard is to make a nice heavy album cover. That's the only part that you use the chipboard on, is the cover. And you can buy chipboard at uh, Michael's or at I believe Hobby Lobby carries it also. You can also order it online from Amazon. I usually order mine online, but I order it from Michael's. Um, so what you need to do is, like I said, decide what size you want your album. I decided that I'm going to make my album 7 inches high and 6 inches wide. And the reason I'm going to make it 6 inches wide, which normally you would only do 5 or 5.5 inches, is I want to put some tabs on the edge of the pages. So I want to give an extra 1/2 inch there for the tabs to stick out without sticking out beyond the cover of the album. So I have cut those because the only cutter that I have that will cut this chipboard is a guillotine style, and I didn't want to try and show you how I did that. But anyway, I have 2 pieces that are 6 by 7, one piece that is 7 by 2. Now I like to make my bindings, or my back centerpiece, 2 inches, because that will allow me for 4 or 5 pages and still leave room for some embellishments on the pages that kind of stand out a little bit. So I generally make my spine 2 inches wide and as tall as the album, which is 7 inches high. Now, the group that I belong to, when we made albums, we kind of had to search a little bit so that when you make the album and you have where the paper is going to crease like this, a lot of people have problems with that crease tearing in the paper. But what I've found and what others have found is that the recollection paper, the recollection collection, which you can get at Michael's, is the best paper to make the cover with so that it doesn't split at the seam. And that's very irritating after you get almost the whole album done and all of a sudden your seam splits and you have no way to fix it. So what I take are 2 pieces of paper, because since I want to use the Recollections. Recollections, as far as I know, does not make 12 by 12 sheets of solid paper. So I get the 8.5 by 11. So I use 2 sheets and I take the first sheet, and this I believe is 3/8 inch score tape. Used to always use 1/4 inch score tape, but I'm getting a little low right now, and I don't have 1/4 inch, but I do have the 3/8 inch. So I take it and I put it along one of the long sides, right along the edge, like so. And then I'm going to adhere it by using one of the sticks. And as soon as that's been adhered, then I pull that piece of tape off, or pull the cover off of that piece of tape. And I take this piece of paper and I line it up right along the edge of the tape, so that the ends are even and it just covers the tape, like so. Now, the reason that I do it this way as opposed to doing it this way is that I have more control over where this seam is going to fall in the album. So if you take your sheets and you put them down like this, you'll see that the seam is falling right at the center of the spine of the album. So that's good. I don't want it on the front, and I don't want it right near one of the openings. Now, I have this little fancy tool. It's called a Perfect Trim Ruler. And it's made for cutting the corners of your album so that they're perfectly right and even. But before we get to that, we need to set these down. Now, what I generally do is I will take and mark 1 inch from the left-hand side and 1 inch from the bottom. That 1 inch is going to be turned back on the cover to cover the sides completely. So that's going to be my starting point. These two here will fall in as we go along. But I am going to make a 1 inch mark near the center and a 1 inch mark over here, just so that I know when I'm laying them down that they're all going down straight. So then you take one piece of the large cardstock and you're going to put chipboard, not cardstock. I've always had a problem saying chipboard or cardstock. This is chipboard. And I'm going to put the score tape along all 4 sides of the chipboard. And I'm going to put one across the center diagonally. And I'm going to go across the center diagonally this way. The reason I tore it in the middle is so that I can tear the back paper off of the score tape. Then I'm going to tighten it all down. And I'm going to tear the paper, back paper, off of the score tape. Now I'm using white for the cover at this point because it's going to have designer paper on it, and that will be what makes it complete and finished. So I didn't have any pink or green that I had enough paper of to do it in either the pink or the green to go with the paper I'm going to use. So I went with the white. Now, what I'm doing here and what I did when you first saw me start picking this up is I have some fuzzy edges. And so I'm just cleaning off the fuzzy edges. Don't have to, they aren't that big, but I like to do it just to make sure that everything sits solid and goes around the corner nicely. Then I'm going to take this with the score tape on the bottom, and I'm going to line it up with this line and with this line and put it down. That is my front cover. That will hold it secure and keep it straight. So then I'm going to take the spine and I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, I will move the tape. And this is where this little tool comes in handy, as well as the corners. This tool is the thickness of the area that you want between the front cover and the spine. So if you put it down here like this, and you line this up with the bottom line, and you put it down, you have the perfect amount of room between the spine and the front cover to give it room to bend without putting a lot of pressure on the paper when it's bending. So then we take the back cover and we do the same thing. Okay, now we're ready to put the back cover on. And once again, we'll place this in the center, and we'll make sure that it's at the bottom 1-inch line. Put it down. And there's that step. So there you have your front, your back, and your spine. And it will bend easily and won't put pressure on the paper. The next thing that I generally do is, this ruler is 1 1/8 inches wide, but I don't really concern myself with that extra 1/8 of an inch, but I don't want all of this up here extra when I'm trying to fold things back. So I put it down, and I cut off any extra. Now you see, the piece I cut off a little bit wider at the bottom than it is at the top. But that's not going to matter, because we left the extra inch, and the cover, the chipboard is straight. So whatever, if this is 1/8 of an inch shorter, or this is 1/8 of an inch longer, or whatever it ends up being, it really doesn't matter, because the book itself is going to be straight. And I do it strictly for the purpose of making it a little neater looking, a little easier to work with. So now I have like this. I have a 1-inch section all the way around. Now, again, this is where our handy little tool is going to come in handy, because we are going to take and we are going to put, all right, there's a square on the outside. There's a square on the inside set at an angle. At the corner places, the square on the inside is what you're going to use as your guide. And you're going to use like this corner here, and you're going to set it right at the corner of your chipboard, and you're going to cut it off like this. So it looks like I need a new blade in my razor blade. And that's what you end up with, a perfectly cut corner. Now notice that there is just a hair more white paper here on the corner. That needs to be there. Otherwise, your corner of your chipboard is going to show on the album. So this is set up so that this line here falls this much short. If you line it up, if you line the cardstock up with it, it will give you that little bit of extra. And it's generally, oh, I guess about 1/8 of an inch if you're cutting it by hand. But you want to give that extra there. Otherwise, like I said, your corners of your chipboard are going to show on your albums. And that will make sense here in another step or two. And if you're using this to make your corners, always make sure that you use the same corner, because I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, but this space here is wider. This space here is very, very narrow. And then we have these two different sizes here. And what you're generally using is the corner that is the width or the depth of your chipboard, so that you have the perfect amount of paper left on the corners. Okay, now I'm going to fold these sides in, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to put score tape on the edge of the paper, and I'm going to put score tape on the edge of the chipboard. That will catch this piece of paper top and bottom. When you fold it over, you'll have tape up here and you'll have tape down here. So once again, the edge of the paper and the edge of the cardstock. Chipboard. Darn! I'm going to get you totally confused because I can't remember to say the right word. Sorry about that. Edge of the paper. Edge of the cardstock. And once again, the edge of the paper. And the edge of the cardstock. Chipboard. Oh dear, I'm so silly. All right, now when you fold this in, you want to start with the long edge first. So I'm going to pull this paper off, and I'm going to pull this paper off. But I'm not going to just turn this paper up. I'm going to pick up the cover and I'm going to stand it up like this, just making a crease in that paper so that it's perfectly straight across the bottom. And then I go all the way. Like so. I crease the edge on the inside. I crease the edge on the outside. And I make sure that the edge of the paper is creased down. There is one side perfectly straight, and a lot of times I like to take and run this along the edge like this. You don't have to put much pressure on it, just a bit. And there we have a squared off edge. I don't know if you can see that, but it's perfectly flat, perfectly squared off. and looks good. Makes for a very nice album. Cover is the first thing that somebody's going to see, and it's going to be their first impression of that album. So the more perfect you can make it, the more loved the album will be. So now I'm doing it to the top side. I crease the paper a couple of times, then I lay it flat. Crease the top of the paper, I crease the edge, turn it over, I crease the edge, turn it up, and I flatten out this side. There you have two perfectly created edges. Then we go and do an end. Now there's one extra little step on this part. Be sure and watch here. Take off the paper. Then you see where you've got a fold over here from the bottom and on the top. You're going to take your little tool and you're going to flatten that out, pushing it inward so that they're very flat. That's what's going to cover your corner so that your corner doesn't show. That was the reason for the extra little bit on the corner. So then I crease it a couple times and lay it flat. Raise everything. And you can see there that your corners are completely covered. There won't be any chipboard showing. It's completely enclosed. So on the other end, we remove the paper. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to push these corners in. Like so, so that they lay flat. Crease the paper a little bit and lay it down. Okay, so there we have the cover. You can bend these all the way in. There's no pressure on the creases. Everything is completely covered on the outside. And we're ready to cover the inside. I'm not going to do that at this time. I'm going to do it when I put the hinge in the center for the hidden hinge pages. I'm going to make that a video 2 or part 2 so that I can concentrate just on that process, and it will also cover the rest of the inside of the book. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope this was helpful to anybody who is trying to learn how to do it. And I'd be happy to answer any questions. Just put them in the comments below, and I'll try and answer them for you. Otherwise, I will see you probably later today in video part 2. Okay, thank you very much. Have a nice day. Everybody be crafty, and I love you all.